This is Meredith with the Cedar Rapids Public Library. Thanks for joining us for this installment of Read Woke. Today, I have a very special guest. We have with us Kalmia Strong from the Center for Afrofuturist Studies and Public Space One. She wears many, many hats, and I'm hoping that she can let you know about some of the incredible things going on, some of the incredible things she does, and then some incredible things that you could be reading. So, without further ado, Kalmia, would you mind telling the folks at home a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Meredith. I'm super happy to be here. I am the program director at Public Space One, and Public Space One is an arts organization and several spaces in Iowa City. And there's many things to say about Public Space One, but one of the things that I really like to tell people first is that while we have a lot of different things going on, the sort of core of what we do is creating spaces where people with creative ideas can realize them. And that could be an exhibition, performance, something that happens just over a short period of time, or it could become a long-term program. And so the Center for Afrofuturist Studies is an example of one of those things. It was created 5 years ago and is now one of our programs at Public Space One. The curator of that program is named Anaïs Dupont, and he approached us with this idea to create a residency program for artists of color in Iowa City, to bring people from all over the country, and actually we've had an international resident as well, to come to Iowa City for a time, work on their artwork, whether it's writing, music, visual art, video, etc., and then share it with the community in Iowa City. And the thing that sort of ties all of the artists together who are part of the Center for Afrofuturist Studies program is that they are artists who are imagining in lots of different ways, and in some cases enacting more just and equitable futures, particularly for people of color in the United States.
That's kind of amazing. I mean, like, just in a nutshell, like, we're doing everything. I think it's such an interesting way to create community too. And something that I've been impressed with is the diversity of media and mediums that artists are using within their residencies. And I think it's just so holistic to see all these different types and ways of interacting with art that are so really either sometimes physical or like digital, whatever the case may be. You know, I think it's such a well-rounded kind of program in terms of a consumer of art. And well, it's true. Like, it's so pleasing, and there's something that's always interesting that's going on one way or the other, like, just because it's a different texture, let alone all the other ideas that come from it. I don't know. I think it's beautifully curated and a super incredible thing, like just down the interstate from all of us in the Cedar Rapids area. But like, for this whole area, it's kind of a big deal. And I don't think as many people know about it as should. But I don't know. Do you want to talk a little bit just about what's been going on recently?
Sure. Yeah. And thank you. Thank you for saying that. We're proud of the program and just sort of amazed by the work that all of the artists who have participated in it have done here and continue to do. A couple sort of big things recently. One is that last year we moved into a new space, and previously the Center for Afrofuturist Studies had not really had a physical space within PS1. It just sort of bloomed up wherever it needed to. Someone there.
That's so great, though.
And now in our new space, we have a CAST dedicated space that is, we're calling it the CAST Reading Room. And that means that it is filled with books and some artwork that artists have left with us after their residencies. And is also can serve as sort of an event space, or hopefully when we're able to have the public in our building again, a place where people can use it as a space to explore some of the ideas and texts and images that people are working with. The other thing is that, of course, because of COVID, we were not able to have our artists and residents come physically to Iowa City this summer as we had planned. And so one of the residencies we delayed, but then the other one, the artist's name is Antoine Williams. He lives in North Carolina, and he pivoted really beautifully to come up with a project that he had already had in mind but wasn't going to do as part of his residency, called the Black Fusionist Society. And this is a digital project that it's so complicated and beautiful, it's hard to describe it succinctly, but basically takes a point in history in Wilmington, North Carolina, when a town was destroyed by white supremacists, and imagines forward from that a new mythology of this Black Fusionist Society, a group of people from that town who continue through generations to imagine escaping white supremacy and like building a better future. And I'm not doing this justice, but the thing that's really, he made amazing artwork and writing for this, but the thing that's really amazing about this project, in my opinion, is that it is really collaborative. And so he invited anyone to read and see what he has made, and then create their own art or writing to become part of this Black Fusionist Society mythology, which will live online indefinitely. And so it's really a collaborative project open to anyone who feels inspired by this story. And so that's housed on our website for the Center for Afrofuturist Studies. And yeah, it was something that was really special that we were able to do despite not actually having Antoine here in person.
Well, that's a really interesting, I feel like I say this about COVID-19 season all the time. It's really an interesting thing that happens. But, you know, and when we're forced into a virtual place, although it's sometimes awkward and it sometimes is kind of disjunctive, it does allow for different levels of collaboration that you all might not have experienced otherwise, right? So like your audience, as long as you have access to these like hardware and software, literally, so that you can like connect through the internet, if you have access to that, then you can connect with people that you never would have otherwise. So nice job, buddy. You unlocked a kingdom. But I think that that's, and I don't know, library school talk here, right? So I think it's one of the interesting things that when I was in library school, I went for archives and preservation, and I did a lot of work with folklore. And so like this created mythology is truly like of the people. This is a new, it's like our new mythology, right? I think we, at one point we talked about memes being like folklore, and it's like a collaborative and like of the people storytelling. And like when you were telling me about this project, like I looked at it online, but then I got goosebumps like all over again as you talked about it. It's such a beautiful, I mean, not accident of having to work virtually, but a beautiful product of working virtually, I think. Yeah. It was an impressive pivot. But
yeah, it's a really amazing project. And when I was saying mythology, actually that's a word that he used in describing the project, but like I almost didn't say that because it's made me think so much about history and what's real and truth and all of that, because as people are continuing to realize over and over and over, and hopefully continuing and acting on this, like things that we've learned as history that is real, things that happened are only from one perspective often. And so even though what he's creating is imagined and creative, you know, an art project, it is, you know, manifesting a real truth in this way that is different than just reading a historical narrative that supposedly is based on things that really happened. So there's a lot of complexity within the project, thinking about what do artists and writers do in terms of helping us imagine what has happened and then what can happen in the future, and sort of hopefully recreating the future in times like right now where it feels can feel pretty dire.
This is true. This is true. Well, and like, I think this might be a good time, if you don't mind, to just say something briefly about like, is there like, do you have an elevator speech for like the concept of Afrofuturism or something being Afrofuturistic? As, I mean, that goes along with the center, but like, you know, maybe not everyone might be familiar with either what it means or in the context of the center.
Yeah. Oh, I am really bad at elevator pitches, but I do obviously have to explain it sometimes. And so if people are familiar with Afrofuturism, they're often familiar with the musician Sun Ra. I feel like he's probably the most famous artist who is associated with Afrofuturism. And that's very much, I mean, and also of course, Black Panther is another very well-known pop culture iteration of that. And so those very much like are sort of looking a little bit further into the future, thinking about space and or like alternative futuristic technologies and societies that are for and by people of African descent and other people of color who have been historically oppressed and continue to be oppressed in the United States and elsewhere. And so, but one of the things that we try to do through the Center for Afrofuturist Studies, and this comes from Anais, our curator, is really expand that idea, like, because future can mean, you know, 1,000 years from now, or it can mean tomorrow, or like later today. And so like trying to imagine what a future that is liberated and fair and safe for people of color, whether that's later today or in 1,000 years, is sort of that's the whole scope. And because we're an art space, an arts organization, we are looking at that through a creative lens, an imaginative lens, but of course it obviously plays into real life events in a super important way as well. Yeah.
That was very good. That was a great elevator speech.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah. You're welcome.
I love that idea of thinking about the future as both something, like when people say futuristic, they think of like Star Trek or whatever, and Star Trek's very important actually in a lot of ways to Afrofuturism and other ways of imagining the future. But yeah, like future continues to happen all the time in a much shorter scope.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful statement. You know, like that just kind of like sat there with me for a second. It's true. Thank you for doing that. I didn't warn you that I was going to ask you to do that, so thank you. I feel like for patrons of the library that are looking for reading recommendations, some might already be familiar with like a genre of Afrofuturism in literature, perhaps, but I think it's beyond just like a Black character in science fiction, right? Like, I mean, it's part of it, but it's just really interesting. And to me, how it all is far wider than like a literary genre coming from like the library world, you know? That is a segue. You did bring some reading recommendations. I think folks should know, do you want to talk just real briefly about the library section that they can get to on your website? Because people from the website, and I will put a link into the description for this program, and then I'll make sure that it goes up on a slide at the end of the interview. But it is such a well curated website. You can get so many things from home, whether, you know, whether the actual center was open or not. But like, I just think it's such a great experience. So tell the folks at home what they've won, and then if you tell them about a couple books, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so on our website, which is afrofuturist.center, and that's the other thing we got recently, is a brand new, beautiful website. We have a virtual representation of our library. It doesn't have everything that we have in our library in full text there, but it has a lot of things. And every so often we invite someone to curate a section of books, and it's sort of like curating an art exhibition, except for with books and other texts. And so we have there these groups, sort of thematic groups of magazine articles, books, other things, comics, things like that, that are curated around certain themes by scholars, artists, and other folks who we think have a particular insight into some area of Afrofuturism in this expanded sense. And so you can go there. And for example, the most recent one is called Love Land, Love People. And it is a collection of texts about Black people's relationship to the natural world that was curated by Karen Alfred, who's an artist here in Iowa City. And so you could go and to the website and see all the things that Karen thought were a good way to look at this theme and idea from a lot of different perspectives, including poetry, journalism, nonfiction, and other things.
It's just so great. I love it. It's like whatever you're in the mood for, you can find something, you know? Like I find that, don't tell anyone, I don't read a lot of books these days, but I gravitate towards, like, I'll pick up poetry all the time because it doesn't take me a long time to read a poem, right? Like I can still ingest that throughout my day. And so I think that it's again, it's such a holistic look at, you know, people, and not only the diversity of media, in this case, literature and writing that's out there, but also like what people are able to and willing to and predisposed to be ingesting. I think it's amazing. Okay, thank you. So show them some stuff from the library, maybe.
Okay, so I picked 3 different books from our library that are different genres because people have different preferences, and I feel like mine have changed during quarantine as well, actually, like what I feel. I love reading, but sometimes, I don't know, I feel like it's shifted a little bit. So because you're talking about poetry, this is the first one I'll talk about. This is Calamities by Renee Gladman. And this actually, so Cass has a book club as well. And this is the next book that we are going to talk about in our book club. I don't know exactly when it's going to be yet, but sometime soon. Renee Gladman is an artist and a writer. And this book, Calamities, is sort of a perfect book for people who like think they don't like poetry, I think, maybe, or I don't know, I can't easily describe this because it's really sort of a cross genre, like essay poetry, and I don't know, it's just like, it's and very much in Renee Gladman's head, but I'll read what it says on the back. Renee Gladman is an artist and writer preoccupied with lines, crossings, thresholds, geographies, and syntaxes as they play out in the interstices of poetry and fiction. And I feel like that is a good description. And she has written many other books as well, have to do with architecture, futures. I don't know. It's a really amazing book that is very hard to describe. So I definitely recommend that.
That's the sign of a good book. I just can't even describe it.
I feel like
you can feel it.
Yeah, the way that I read this book was different than I read many, many other books. And to me, that was like a sign of something really special, even though I can't describe it very well. I am not a writer. The second book I wanted to recommend is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. And if you do know about Afrofuturism, you may know about this book already. It's a pretty well-known novel. It is really amazing. Octavia Butler was an amazing writer of futures. And the really interesting thing about this right now is that it's set in 2024. It's a futuristic.
That's so close.
Yes, it's very close. And it was written, I believe, in 1993. And it is about a time in which climate change and authoritarian governments have changed what the United States is like. And the main character, Lauren, loses her family and ventures out and creates this new spirituality called Earthseed, and I don't know, it's an intense book to read right now, but it is very, very good. And I feel like if you're going to read one thing in the sort of Afrofuturist genre of novels, it should be Parable of the Sower, because then you'll want to read more. Finally, going back to this current book exhibition that we have, Love Land, Love People. This is one of the books from that. It's called Farming While Black by Leah Penniman, who is one of the founders of a place called Soul Fire Farm in New York State. And this is a nonfiction book that has really practical advice for farming, but then also talks about ancestral knowledge that comes from the history of Black people farming, both in Africa and in the United States. And it is a super inspiring book. And I think really like a good example of like what Afrofuturism is in a very practical, like what about tomorrow or next year sense, right? Because we all eat food that is farmed and in Iowa, farming is particularly important. And so thinking about, there's such a just horrific history of Black farmers not having access to federal funding that other farmers have. So like this is an incredibly important, I mean, among other things, this is an incredibly important and inspiring book, I think, to learn about, but then also to be sort of a handbook for folks who want to farm themselves.
You know, that's really interesting. I'm so glad you brought that book, because like in my head, like Afrofuturism had been so much more conceptual, with like implications that happen because of impressions that people get from material and media. And I hadn't really thought of something like nonfiction, like a practical guide, being Afrofuturism. And it totally, in this moment, has changed the way that I see things. Look at that. Look what you just did. I just got more woke.
Well,
you know, but like,
especially as like thinking super practically as a white person, I'm a white person, like thinking not just imaginatively and thinking about, oh, like something in the way future is when we can figure all this stuff out, but thinking about like what can we do right now as white people and everyone to like practically do things that can move us towards this
affect
future.
Change.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me in this moment. Yes, nonfiction works too.
Also, yeah. Also, I love vegetable farming and think it's really important. So wanted to bring it up as well.
I'm so glad you did. Those are 3 incredible picks. Again, like well curated, a little something I think that anyone can latch onto and pick up. Hey, you're welcome. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon. I will say again that I'm going to include links to all of the information in the program description that goes on Facebook and YouTube. But I would encourage all of my beautiful patrons out there to do some poking around on the internet, because it's just so impressive. It is a beautiful website, but also there's just so much. There's just so much content there, and it's all like right in our backyards. Like these people are living and breathing like miles away from us, and I just think it's so empowering, and it's really nice to know that there are people doing such good work so close. That's all.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if anyone's watching this and is incredibly excited about the Center for Afrofuturist Studies, especially when things are, when we can be closer to each other in person again, we are the kind of organization that really encourages people to get involved. We are not a very vertical organization. And so if you are excited about what we're doing, I encourage you to get in touch, and we can do it digitally as well, to join a book club or help organize or host artists when we have artists coming back again. So don't hesitate to be in touch with us.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being with us once again. I'd like to thank you, Kalmia, and thank you all of you out there in the digital world that are watching. From all of us here at the Cedar Rapids Public Library, thanks so much. Have a good one.
All right, friends, as promised, here are your links, websites, and ways to get connected. So, the Center for Afrofuturist Studies is found at afrofuturist.center. You can see here, you can find them on Facebook and on Instagram. Now, Public Space One houses the center, and so you'll see here, publicspace1.com is where you can find out more information about that incredible organization, plus their Facebook and their Instagram handles. Additionally, if you're not familiar with the Read Woke Challenge, it is a reading program. You can find a link to it on our library's website. You log in just like you would for summer reading or a winter reading challenge. You find the Read Woke Challenge, you register, and you dig right in. There are so many badges you can earn, so many different voices you can elevate, so much you can learn from your deliberate reading. If you have any questions about any of this information, feel free to give us a call, send an email, or now you can stop in again. We have limited browsing, but we are open to the public 10 to 7, Monday through Thursday, and Friday and Saturday 10 to 4. Come and see us. Thanks so much for watching.